Great, so I'm Laura Fox. I'm a second year PhD student in the Education Department at York University. I'm in the Psychology and Education Research Centre. So I'd just like to start by providing you with a sort of brief overview of what my PhD is investigating, and then I'm going to discuss the challenges faced as a result of COVID-19, how my data collection techniques had to change to accommodate school closures, and how we can use technology to reach harder to access participants. So my PhD aims to investigate how children with special educational needs and disabilities, specifically those with autism spectrum disorder and developmental language disorder, experience friendships, and it aims to examine whether these experiences differ between mainstream and specialised educational settings. In order to explore these experiences, I wanted to pay close attention to enabling children to have a voice and ensure that they were asked about how they felt about their friendships, as opposed to just using observations or parent and teacher reports. So why should we investigate friendships? Well, friendships play an important part as a protective role for children as they navigate social worlds. Mutual friendships can be a source of social support, and high quality mutual friendships have been found to be a protective factor against bullying in typically developing children. So unfortunately, there's quite a lot of growing evidence that children with SENDs have on average significantly fewer mutual friendships than their peers without SENDs. And having a diagnosed special educational need or disability not only makes it difficult to make friends, but it makes it difficult to maintain them. Children with SENDs are also at an increased risk of being bullied and victimised by their peers, which combined with this lower level of mutual friendship might have a negative impact on their well-being. So it's important that we explore the differences between educational settings as well when considering experience of children with SENDs. Studies have shown that children tend to show preference towards those who are similar to themselves. So typically developing children often choose to make friends with other typically developing peers, and children with SENDs show a tendency to favour children with similar needs. So it could be proposed that the type of establishment a child attends might influence the number of friendships that they have, as well as the quality of friendships, because those children in mainstream settings might find themselves predominantly occupied with typically developing peers. So it's quite clear from previous literature that children with SENDs have difficulty making and maintaining good quality friendships, but there's little known about how they actually feel about their friendships or the lack of friendships. In recent years, sort of the prominence of children's rights and social studies of children have challenged conventional thinking. The UN Conventions on the Right of the Child stated that all children capable of forming an opinion should be provided with the opportunity to express those views. Which has resulted in an increase of qualitative studies aiming to give a voice to children. But children's voices are seldom truly heard, especially in the content of SEND, and studies designed to allow children to play an active role in research processes may still face difficulties interpreting what those children have wanted to say. So qualitative methods are becoming much more prominent in childhood studies. The method, however, is much less common when researching children with SENDs, so it might be because there's a few more additional barriers present when using qualitative data collection methods. They tend to often rely on use of our language via interviews and focus groups, which might be really difficult to access by those children who have lower levels of language or attention difficulties. So that's not to say that researchers haven't successfully carried out qualitative research with this cohort. Data collection techniques that focus on non-verbal tasks such as drawing, scrapbooking or taking photographs have been successfully used in research with children who have developmental language disorder, and they were effectively used as prompts to facilitate discussions in semi-structured interviews. So with all this in mind, I wanted to use a data collection method that allowed children to express their opinions in a way that they could access and in a way that they felt comfortable, in order to gain an insight into their individual experiences. So I'd initially hoped to gain access to primary schools where I would carry out sort of in-depth semi-structured interviews with children in person. Children were going to be provided with a scrapbook ahead of the interview, and then I would use this scrapbook as a springboard for the discussion points. There was also going to be a variety of craft items available so children could play and feel comfortable. They were also going to have the opportunity to go over their responses to ensure that the meaning was understood, and then child data would be triangulated with teacher and parent questionnaires. But it became quite clear that schools were not going to be accepting external visitors, so I came up with a plan B, which was that instead of me visiting the school, I could ask teaching assistants to facilitate the interview with myself via a video call. But this was going to take quite a lot of time and a lot of resources from the school, which wasn't something that was in abundance during a global health crisis. So it was evident that schools were going to close, and it was evident that even those children with the HCPs who were entitled to a place were still opting to be homeschooled. So with children being homeschooled, it was agreed that creating a pack that could be sent home would be the most appropriate way to collect my scrapbook data. So a scrapbook was designed containing activities relevant to each research question, and then the pack can be posted out to participants along with things like colouring pens and craft items, including like labels and emojis and Play-Doh. So this is the front cover of one of the scrapbooks I've just received back. So each task is designed with a research question in mind, and there are example interview questions were drafted when I was coming up with the tasks to ensure that the activity could be used as a springboard in interviews. So you can see here that my key question for this section was, what do you make a good friend? There was then an activity designed where children could draw or build their perfect friend, that's Play-Doh, and then there were some example interview questions that were drafted along with it. So the activities were designed in the hope that children could complete them on their own for the most part, and all of the tasks were run through primary school teachers and SENCOs to ensure that the level was appropriate. The scrapbooks is also chunked into sections so that they don't have to be completed in one go, which I thought was really important for children with attention difficulties or lower levels of language. And because I didn't have any contact with the children, I wanted to make sure that they could say yes or no. So this is the assent page at the beginning of the scrapbook, and if they're happy after they've read through the information sheet, they can write their name and draw a little happy face. So there are how-to pages provided with each activity to explain what the task required, and there are multiple ways in which each task can be completed so that every child can join in however they wish. So this is a how-to page for the All About Me section, which was just designed to give children a little bit of ownership over their scrapbook, and they can draw things that they like and talk about what they've been doing during the day. And this is the what do you think makes a sort of good or perfect friend. So there's multiple ways that they can complete this as well. There was Play-Doh. If the child's not very into drawing, they can build a Play-Doh friend and sort of write about them. And they've also got the options to use like emojis or write on the page if they don't want to use the stickers. So once I'd designed my scrapbook, I then had to figure out how I was going to do my interviews. So I wanted to ensure that I could still allow children to talk about their scrapbook and their friendships, because I thought it was really important to truly capture their experiences. But with homeworking being extended to research students, I needed to make sure my interviews could work remotely. So I had originally planned to conduct the interviews myself via a video call and just request that parents sent in photos of the scrapbooks ahead of time so that I could discuss them with the children. And it seemed like a really good alternative to in-person interviews, but I became quite aware that children, especially sort of primary age children with SENDs, might not be very eager to engage with a stranger via video call, and they might also be quite tired of being online. So it would also make it quite difficult to build a rapport with children, and there was a risk that the power balance might become even more prominent. So even though COVID-19 has brought quite a few challenges, it has encouraged people to rely a little more heavily on technology. So parents are a bit more aware of video calling, and online teaching and services such as speech language therapists have moved to remote assessments. So this uptake of technology could be seen as a positive to those interested in researching harder to access participants, or those that wish to observe children in a familiar setting without their presence impacting on the child's behaviour. So I decided that I would ask parents to interview their children about the tasks. They'd follow an interview script and record this conversation for me via video. Parents are also asked to discuss each section of the scrapbook and ask their children to explain why they've chosen certain friends or certain activities. The video recording along with scrapbook data is then going to be analysed to explore their children's friendships and identify any themes throughout the data set. So this is a task about a real life friend, so they get to write about friend, and then there are accompanying questions for the parents to ask on the left-hand side. So it's hoped that this method will be much more convenient for participants and parents. Not only does it allow for interviews to be carried out at a convenient time because they don't need to arrange a time with researchers, but it also removes the distraction of researchers being in their child's home or school. It reduces the need for travel, which means that we can reduce costs and we can access a wider range of participants. and it requires very little technology. It can be done by a smartphone or tablet, and then we can just use a secure Dropbox program to transfer the file. So there are still some limitations. There's a risk that those who are less comfortable using technology might be deterred from participating. Hopefully that will change with the current climate. There's also a risk that you exclude members of society that are not fortunate enough to have access to such devices or stable internet. And there's still limitations to using parents as interviewers. Children might feel a little bit more comfortable talking to them than a researcher, but they still might not want to open up about personal or sensitive topics. So just to summarise, exploring the experiences of friendships in children with SENDs might help us to inform future social interventions, and by employing creative data collection methods, we can allow this cohort to express their voices more clearly. Combining their written accounts, drawings and interview data along with parent and teacher questionnaires might also help us to improve our understanding of their experiences. Although COVID-19 has brought with it quite a few challenges, it's also helped researchers to think outside the box with regards to data collection methods, and it's highlighted the power of using technology to gather remote data, which might improve our ability to reach participants that we couldn't reach in the past, and providing a more convenient way of gathering data going forward. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura, for your presentation. I can see that your research is quite related to mine, and we will